Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Then I would like to welcome Jigme for today's topic, the diamond and the mountain. Hanli, would you mind to introduce Jigme?
Absolutely, it would be my pleasure and honor. We are very, very excited today to speak to Venerable Jigme, who for me is one of the most impressive people that I've met in the 10 organizations. Just so much knowledge and so much love, an incredible, incredible person. She is also the president of the Asian Classics Institute board. She's on the board of Diamond Mountain, and she's the co-director of the Diamond Cutter Press. We know that she has a master's degree in East-West psychology and that she's also completed all of the Asian Classics Institute and Tantra courses. In addition to that, she has been instrumental in recording and archiving nearly all of Geshe Michael's teachings, making sure that everyone has access to this incredible information. And on top of that, she is a teacher that has students in Mexico, in Ireland, in Argentina, in Canada, and here in the United States. If all of that is not enough to impress you, she also did a 3.5-year total silent retreat, solitary and silent retreat. So you can be very sure that when you speak with her, you are getting into a deep, deep, deep pool of knowledge and worth having conversations with, which is what we're doing today. Instead of having one of our formal chats where we let people talk, we felt that it would be really appropriate to just have a conversation, ask questions, and see how much of this wonderful information we can share with the world out there. Venerable Jigme, welcome, and thank you so much for getting up so early in the morning. I know that you're with your family, so we really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So one of the first questions I have is that, Diamond Mountain has a really deep history, which dates back hundreds of years. You know quite a bit of this history because you've done some research, and I was wondering if you would like to share a little bit of this history with us.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, I wrote it all down. I mean, there is a short history of Diamond Mountain that I wrote, starting from 2 million years ago. It's interesting to me to get an idea of how the land was formed, because that's important. Much of our history is based on the fact that there are springs there, and so there was water available, and so people could come and live there. One of the periods that I found most interesting is how people were able to come and live on the land just using the resources that were available in that place. We come in and we're importing food, and even we're importing water to some extent. And so we're not really aware of how people used to live on the land. And for me, that was very important, very interesting. And so so for me, also the period of time just before the non-indigenous people, the non-native people came, in other words, the Spaniards, and after that, the Americans. For me, that's very interesting. So I put together a few slides. I don't know if Sunam, if you could show them, or can you? Okay, because I'm not sure that my setup is it. Okay, so this is an animal called a glyptodon. I wrote it down on the picture because I was afraid I might forget the name, but it's like a giant armadillo, huge. They said it was as big as a Volkswagen bug, the original Volkswagen. And this was like a really, really long time ago. And after that, this was before the dinosaurs were killed off. But apparently they found spears near there. So this is very close to where we live. So they know that there were humans hunting these animals. And not only were there animals like this, there were, they said there were these giant elephants, and there were camels, and there were horses, and there were all kinds of very animals that don't exist there anymore. And then after the end of the dinosaurs, there was they think it was a meteorite hit the earth, and then there was dust everywhere, and there was another ice age, and then all of this died off. And the next time we see humans around here is about 12,000 years ago. And this is what we have most information about. If you show the next picture, they found this kind of tool that people were using. Some of them were made out of obsidian, which is this black natural glass, volcanic. And so these things, this arrowhead was actually found at Diamond Mountain.
Oh.
And they found these kind of tools. This was in, they called them Paleo Indians, and we don't know very much about them. Then the next people that we know of who came in it's called the Cochise tradition. And that was between 5,000 to 200 years ago. 5,000 to 200 BC. And we also don't know much about them, but they had mammoths, like giant elephants. And first they were hunters, but then they started growing crops. And so the crops that they grew were corn and beans and squash. And these are all crops that are indigenous to the Americas. Then they lived in these, you can show the next slide. It's, that's actually, go one more.
You mean the hut?
Yeah. So the people, when the Spaniards came, the people were living in houses like this. And this was mostly because they were, they traveled. Nobody actually lived on the land, but they would come and they would hunt for food, and they would get water, and they would stay for a time. So maybe in the summer they would stay here, and then in the winter they would go somewhere else. The Native Americans who were here, the Chiricahua Apaches, actually their territory at this time goes between the United States and Mexico. And so up until maybe even now, but I don't think anymore, they were allowed to go back and forth on roads that existed inside their own territory. So the Apaches are fairly new in our area. They came around the 1500s. And these are the people who were living on our land until just a couple hundred years, maybe 150 years ago. And I don't want to get into how they were forced to leave, because it's a sad story. But if you go back again, I'll show you what they were eating and what they were. Go back to that. So this is on the left side. I don't know if it reverses when you see it, but on the left side there's these yucca, this beautiful white flowered plants that now in Mexico this is used to make alcohol, tequila, but you can dig up the root and it's very healthy, and that was what they would eat. The one in the middle is from the mesquite trees, and these beans, they look, well, it's a legume, so they have actually, they're like beans, but the seeds are very hard. So if you grind it up, you can grind it up, and it becomes a really nice flour. It's sweet, it's nutritious, it's full of protein. Actually, one of the people, Venerable Cutting, used to have a company where she would sell this flour,
Okay.
And it's a little bit hard to grind. It's very sticky, so you have to have a special grinder. And then the next picture is the local cactus that if you're at Diamond Mountain, you see it everywhere. And you can eat this, the red things, that's the fruit, and they're very sweet. Of course, they have thorns, so that you have to extract the juice in a certain way, or eat the fruit. You have to be careful not to get your fingers stuck. But also then the leaves, the green part, if you can remove they usually burn off these spikes. And then you can eat it, and it's still very popular to eat it in Mexico. I don't think the American people ever got a taste for it, but it's also very nutritious. It's quite good. So that was what they ate. They also would hunt for well, we have a lot of animals at Diamond Mountain. So they would hunt for deer and javelinas, probably. I would think that, because I mean, people hunt for them today. So at Diamond Mountain, of course, we don't hunt. Everything is, all the animals are kept as friends. Then if you go a couple more down, there's some medicinal plants. Yeah, here. So for the Native Americans, and I think in almost all of the Native Americans, tobacco is a sacred plant, and they smoke it in ceremonies, and they use it for offering. And so this also grows at Diamond Mountain, although I haven't seen it very much, so it might not be too common. The other one, which is on the other side, is creosote, and that grows all over Diamond Mountain. And it's a very powerful, what do they call it? It's very powerfully strong. It's good for cancer. And they still use it. I went one time with a friend to visit a Native American medicine man, and he was showing us how you can make it into something that you can take every day to bolster your immune system. And there's a certain way you have to pick it, and so it's very, very strong. So if you're using it, you don't want to use too much. You got to be careful. So the dosage is a little bit. So don't just go and pick some and eat it, because it's anyway. It's a good medicine. Okay, then let's see what else. I wanted to talk a little bit about the women. There's another couple slides. You keep going. Yeah, this is a family. So because they they were migratory, they would put together something like this, like if we were camping, we would have a tent. And this is a family that the photo was taken probably after the Americans arrived there and before it became a state. Because according to the historians, the people didn't wear these clothes originally. They just had like a piece of cloth around their waist or something. And the women, it was matrilineal culture. And so so then the descendants would go through the mother, and that was how people would figure out who they were. They still have actually a very strong, when girls reach puberty, they have celebrations that last for several days anyway. And it's a celebration of her becoming a woman and able to carry on the traditions and to be part of the lineage. And so they all get together, they sing and they pray. There are certain things I wanted to remember. So some of the women also would become, go down to the next one. There's a picture of a couple of the women. Yeah. So the one with her children, that's a typical Native woman who was living there when the settlers arrived. But on the other side, this is a woman who was a very great warrior, Lozin. And her brother was a great warrior, and she would go with the men, but she had a special talent for being able to tell when there was an enemy around. And so she could she'd hold up her hands and then she could tell. And so she was one of the women who was most celebrated in their culture. So anyway, these are the people that I found the most interesting because they were there before and they made that was their world. Their world was Diamond Mountain area. And I don't know, I just find this is of all the history, for me, this is the most important. These people are still around and they live in the area. And when when we first bought that land, there were a few friends already of the Native Americans, and he offered to give them some of the land back. And they said, no, nobody can own the land. The land belongs to everybody. Wow. So he wanted to give it to them, but then they wouldn't take it. But as a result, we feel that this is something that we need to share with them. And they also even came, and for many years during Diamond Mountain University time, they would come and they would do their ceremonies on our land. And they built like a temple made out of air that there's just 4 posts, but you would walk around and you would go in. So you have to respect the walls, even though you can't see them. And for us, it was really interesting because it's totally different from our culture. But it's interesting to see how this land can be used by different cultures in different ways. And for us, it's meaningful, and for them, it's meaningful. So anyway, that's when you sent me the questions, the first one was, what did I find most interesting about the history? That's really what I find most interesting.
And that's really wonderful. And I think that's probably history that's not easily accessible for everyone to know about. So it's really great that we can hear some of this from you, and because it's also your passion. Yeah.
Well, and also because we have, we know some of these people, and they're friends, they're our friends. And so, it's interesting to see the continuity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so moving from that period, could you perhaps tell us a little bit more about what led to the purchase of the land and the development of the university idea at the time?
Yeah, sure. Well, originally, it was at the end of the time that Geshe Michael was teaching ACI in New York. And he got the idea to do a 3-year retreat, which is not so common in our lineage. But he had the idea that this would be a good way to kind of cement the realizations of the teachings that he'd given. And since he had already been teaching so long, then it would be a perfect time to do retreat, because all of that incredible good karma, the seeds that have been built up by teaching so many people, would result in a good outcome from a retreat. So he was looking for a place to do it, and then he wanted to teach the higher teachings. So do retreat and get the result of the retreat, then teach the same students and teach new students, whoever was interested in coming. So he had the idea of doing that, and we found a place. It was actually a different place, and it was on the other side of the mountains, actually. and a little bit different ecology as well. Slightly different plants, a lot of rattlesnakes, and and so they sent up, and there was about 6 people doing retreat there, and yeah, I actually, when he was talking about doing retreat, I said, oh, you know, I would like to do retreat. And he said, don't worry, you'll be there. And then about a year later, I discovered that my job was not to do retreat, but to take care of the retreaters. So I did that for 3 years. So after he did his retreat, during that time, he was interested in finding, since it seemed that we couldn't keep the land that we were on, so he asked us to get somebody to a real estate agent to keep their eyes open to find a place, and they found this. And I wasn't too involved. I was actually in retreat myself when they found the place. But we figured with some difficulty we would be able to purchase it if we all put our money together and did some fundraising, and so we did. And when he came out of retreat, we moved him over there. And it was kind of funny because he had just got out of deep retreat and he hadn't seen anybody for so long. And so, I mean, even to sit in a car was a problem. I think he was a little bit dizzy. Anyway, so then we started the Diamond Mountain. We started, first of all, the original director was building a house, which turned out to be Jamyang House. And they had a big living room, which is still there. And so we had the first classes in that building because that was the only building we had. And then slowly they decided they were going to build a temple. So that temple got built, but for the first year we were in Jamyang House.
Gotcha.
And the director, he had some little kids and he started having more kids. And so he found it was a little bit frightening to have little kids running around the desert. So they moved, and Venerable Kading got that house, and she finished the building of it. So that was her house for the whole time that we were at Diamond Mountain. When we got out of retreat, the people who were caretaking the retreat were given what's the community center now, but it was mostly nuns at that time.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Now I've lost track of the question. Maybe you should ask me another one.
That's fine. I'm curious about you also built a house there, is that right?
I was planning to do the second 3-year retreat, and I had a friend who was an architect, so he designed the house, and it's the one where Utpala ended up doing her retreat. And I was actually, so I was pretty much working as Geshe-la's assistant for even then. So when he decided not to do the retreat, then I thought, well, he's going to need some help. So I decided not to do it as well. And at that time, Utpala didn't have a house, and she wanted to do the retreat, so I just gave it to her.
Gotcha. Did you get to do a 3-year retreat in the end? Or part?
No, I've only served 3-year retreats. I've never actually done for 3 years. I've done 3 years of the longest I've done is almost a year.
Okay. In
one time. But I've done a whole lot of short retreats, like a month or 6 weeks or something.
Is there anything about those retreats that stood out to you? Anything that was a highlight for you that you remember, just off the top of your head?
About the retreats? You know, the thing that actually delights me the most about retreats is the animals who live in the area lose their fear of you, and they all come to, it's just unbelievable. Like, you'll be sitting there and a little fox will come crawling over the fence. The foxes that are nighttime foxes, they can climb, so they can climb trees and fences. And I used to have a fox that came every night,
Mhm.
And the skunks, they're not afraid of you either. There were skunks that lived around me, and they would just be very polite. You know, if I come walking down the path, they would get off and they'd wait, and there was no fear on either side. And so there's a lot of really interesting animals at Diamond Mountain. The Cotamundis they're really cute, and it's just all the animals. They just come, and it's hard to explain because it doesn't happen. And the funny thing is, when you come out of retreat, you go through this period where the animals are your friends, and you know them as like you know your human friends.
Mhm.
Each one is individual. But then you start to, as you come out of retreat, you kind of lose that very slowly, and they kind of slowly turn into animals again.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. But I mean, the purpose of retreat isn't to tame animals,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a nice side effect to me. What really stands out about doing retreat
Mhm.
is that you have to use a lot of discipline.
Hmm.
But it becomes really easy after you, like, for example, I would always get up at 3 a.m, and 3 a.m is a really beautiful time to get up because there's a silence that is more than just lack of sound. It's because all the minds around you, everything is asleep, and it's very subtle. And when you're not in retreat, you don't notice, but the thoughts in people's minds around you, like if people are awake, there's a certain agitation, and if everyone's asleep, it's very, very still. And so it's a really good time to meditate very early in the morning. And so you become aware of these things. You become aware of the phases of the moon, and you start to be able to predict. You know, you start to understand what, you know, about how that affects you, and like that. And there are the monks and nuns do on the full moon and the new moon do their confessions, and that's why, because it's very easy to see when you're used to how the moon works. It becomes very easy to tell what the day is. I did a lot of retreat also in Dharamsala, in northern India, in the foothills of the Himalayas, and around me there were a lot of hermits, monks, Tibetan hermits, and I used to visit some of them because one of them spoke pretty good English, and he was giving me retreat advice, but they didn't have clocks or calendars as far as I know. But on the Sojong days, the days that we did our confession, they would all come out and they would all go down to the main temple. And they just from watching the moon, they knew when the proper day was. And I think that was what Buddha set it up that way, so that it was easy to tell what day we were all supposed to get together. And that was really interesting, you know, because there were thousands of monks and nuns, and we all got together at the temple and did our prayers.
Amazing. I'm sure that there are many people who are interested in doing a retreat, and of course at Diamond Mountain, that's one of our big missions is to create a space for people to do retreat.
Yeah.
Is there any advice you would give, having served and been in retreat, to people who are new to this concept and maybe want to do something a little bit longer?
Yeah. So I didn't quite get the question. You want me to talk about?
Yeah, any advice you might give people who want to either try a retreat or maybe try it a little bit longer?
Yeah. People usually say that you should build up, like do a weekend. And then I think it's good to do a little bit of retreat before you do a longer one. Just because most people aren't used to being alone. There's a lot of people who have never been alone. And I think I spent a lot of my childhood alone. So for me, it wasn't such a jump. But for I think a lot of people, it's frightening to be alone and you don't know what to do with yourself. So I would think if a good thing to do would be to start out with a schedule and then just follow the schedule and do it for maybe a weekend or a week or something. When you get into a longer retreat, I found when I set up to do a retreat for a year, and Geshe Michael gave me a schedule, and every minute was booked, like even 15 minutes here and there. And for me, it felt it was too tight. And when you do a long retreat, you need to be relaxed. So I decided that every day I would allow myself to not do one thing. So I had at least an hour free every day. And for me, that made it relaxed enough so that I could actually follow through, because you need to keep your mind happy in retreat. It's very, very important. If you start to feel like you're being pushed or forced, or if you feel like it's too much, then you need to back off. Because if you feel unhappy, then it grows, and pretty soon you start rebelling in your mind. And anyway, so that's really important. Yeah, I think the main thing is to keep your mind happy when you're in retreat.
So it sounds like it's a balance between having some structure, discipline, and schedule, but also making sure that you create space for just relaxing and being in.
Yeah. When I did for a year, I did retreat, and I actually one day a week I would give myself half day off, and I would I was in the garage. It was a garage then at Diamond Mountain. I was doing retreat, and I'd make a thermos of coffee, and I'd go for a hike, and I'd sit up on the hill and drink my coffee, and that was, it's a relaxing kind of thing to do, and it was something to look forward to. And I remember on Christmas, I took a half a day off also, and I listened to Christmas carols on the radio, which, you're not supposed to do that in retreat, but I think sometimes it's good to just do something that makes you happy.
Yeah.
So,
as you say, either mindset grows. So if you're unhappy, it'll probably be amplified, and if you're happy, it'll be amplified.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Sure. You have a lot of insight into a lot of the other worldview organizations, and one of them is the Diamond Cutter Press.
Yeah.
And it's a really important, you did a lot of time, you spent a lot of time making sure that other people had access to a lot of what Geshe Michael has done, a lot of teaching, and then, capturing a lot of these things so that people can maybe even read or take this into retreat with them, or if they don't have the opportunity to do so. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit more about the Diamond Cutter Press. I think it's something that's quite close to your heart.
Well, I'm working with it now. Yeah. When Geshe was in his 3-year retreat, he wrote a number of books, and he had already published and was successful with Doubleday company. And when he came out, he had this book, How Yoga Works. And it was, I think the manuscript was 1,200 pages. And he offered it to them, and they said they didn't want it. So because it was too long, and they didn't like the idea of a fiction that is teaching you something was something that they never published. So yeah, it was kind of so they weren't familiar with that kind of a book. And so they didn't think it would sell. So one of Geshe-la's students, John Cerullo, was already a publisher, and he said, I'll start a press and I'll publish that book. And so he did. That was how it started. And he ran it for quite a number of years, up until just a few years ago.
Mhm.
And then Geshe-la said he wanted to run it himself. And it was good for John because he was he was only doing it because Geshe-la asked him. And so he was happy to give it back. And so Katie Fetchenheier and I, Geshe-la told us that we had to become publishers.
Mhm.
And so we tried to figure out how to do that. And we slowly we learned how the publishing company worked.
Huh.
And so we did that for a while. More recently, he's asked Rosa Van Schriegen to come in and work with us. And Katie has a full-time job and she owns a couple stores and she has a baby. So it's and also I have a full-time job working with Geshe-la. So it's a big relief now we have Rosa helping us.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, as you explain that, that reminds me that there are so many people who are always involved to make each of these things a success. And Diamond Mountain is not unique in that. There have been so many people over the years who have contributed to finding it, building it, running it. Maybe you can talk a little bit about those people who have made all these incredible contributions.
I could. Yeah, actually, I wrote down so I wouldn't forget anybody. Let's see. I would say, first of all, David and Sarani Stumpf. He came before Geshe-la did his 3-year retreat. He came to Tucson area before we even found the land, and he was teaching at a woman's house who she often sponsored teachers, and somehow they both came, and I'm not really sure why, but they came to the teachings, and they really liked Geshe-la. And so I'm trying to think of the timeline. So they felt that they were his students already when he first started the 3-year retreat. And there was a few of us. There was like about maybe 8 people. And Geshe-la wanted to do it in these yurts. And so the yurts came from Mongolia, and each one was custom made. So they were all different sizes, and they had no instructions. And so I mean, I wasn't really involved in the construction because I was busy trying to sort out how we were going to feed them. And the guys that were doing the construction, they just kind of showed up. Actually, it was really nice. But then one day, a camper showed up, a camper van, and that was the Stumpfs. And they were he had all these tools and he knew how to use them, and it was really helpful. And I think that was how we first, how they first connected. And they kept showing up during the retreat, and just they helped out with financially, and they helped in every way. And then when we started Diamond Mountain University, we bought the other land, and then David, who is Samadhi now, he did pretty much all the maintenance work, and he figured out how to set up the water system with the pipes going everywhere and the wells. And so he was really, I don't know, he and his partner built the house that you're living in now. And they also helped to build the temple. And yeah, they were just amazing, both of them. Sarani, when we started Diamond Mountain University, Geshe Michael wanted to cover all the different aspects that you would learn in the monastery, and one of them is medicine. And so Sarani was trained with Chinese medicine, so she taught a class for quite a number of years. on Chinese medicine, and so a lot of us have some background now in Chinese medicine. So let's see. During the first 3-year retreat, so Venerable Gyaltse had been in New York, and so she came out to help. There was a few people came to help us, and there was another nun, Chuki, who Geshe-la asked her to be one of the caretakers. There were 3 caretakers, and so she was there. And then Kading also came. She was Kat at that time, and she used to come and help us in the kitchen. If I say kitchen, you probably get a mental image of a place that has running water and a stove and things like that, but it wasn't quite like that. It was a yurt, and it wasn't very big, and so we did get water finally. At first we were bringing water. Well, we always had to bring water in, but it was the first kitchen we had was under the oak trees next to the wash. We had some camp stoves, and we had to provide 3 meals a day at that time. It was really, really hard. But anyway, so they came. So Gyaltse and Chuki and Kading, the 3, now all 3 are nuns, were big help. Ani Palma, Lama Palma, she did retreat with Geshe Michael. There was a few people who did. And so she was a retreater, and later she became a teacher at Diamond Mountain. So she taught. I'd say she was pretty important. Then Earl Burney, I think some of you know him. He's in New York now, and he's a very good teacher. He came out very early on during Geshe Michael's 3-year retreat. I can't remember exactly how he found us, but he showed up and he was helping us with caretaking. And then when we went to the other Diamond Mountain, he decided that he was going to be in charge of the campgrounds. A lot of people were camping during the teachings, and so he organized all those people, and that was a really a big help. And also he was one of some of the people really enjoyed debating, and that he was one of them.
Okay.
Then there's Nicole Davis. She and Rob Rosinger were the main people who took care of the second 3-year retreat. He was the director. She was in charge of maintenance, and she also oversaw the building of the Jetsun Kappa Center. And she's amazing. I don't know how she did it. She just figured out how to do all these things and kept it going. Both of them stayed there the whole time during the 3-year retreat. And sometimes they were the only people there, apart from the retreaters. And it was hard. There was a lot of turmoil that went on during that retreat. And they both just very steady, very strong. And so we still have Rob Rosinger. Nicole got married, and now she's working somewhere, but so she's not working at Diamond Mountain anymore, but Rob Rosinger still is. And he's been really helpful in many things, because he used to work for a nonprofit organization, so he understands the law about nonprofits. And he's also done our bookkeeping, and he also did all the design work for the King of the Dharma book, which is huge. And he's done a lot of other things design-wise for us. So he's really skilled at many, many things. So, if I have to give a short list of people who have been instrumental at Diamond Mountain, these would be the ones I'd think of first.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so many multi-talented people. And I'm always astonished at how people have a variety of skills that they bring, and if they don't know, as you say, they just figure it out.
Yeah.
Self-starter.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at that.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have that kind of talent to just figure something out, but maybe it's just in different areas.
And I would say that's probably true. I can keep on talking forever, and I feel like we haven't even allocated enough time for this, but I do want to pause and just see if people have questions, because we have about 10 minutes left, and I'd like to give Venerable Sulam a minute to just talk about our new phase, the new project, which is the stupa project that we've now embarked on. So any questions from anyone for Venerable Jigme about Diamond Mountain? Sulam, I think you're monitoring questions. I can't see any yet.
I can't see any.
Okay.
There's one.
Okay. Are you going to do a sand dam? The question is, are you going to do a sand dam? I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. A dam made out of sand to put water in? Maybe you could explain a little bit more about your question. Maybe while we're waiting for people, so think about some questions if you have any. A dam to collect water and in the creek. I don't think so. There's nothing that we're certainly planning for that. We have wells, we have water that comes down the mountain during the monsoons.
Well, there is actually a small dam up near the Lama house. Where the spring comes out. Okay. There was a dam there, and they had a little pool. When we first got there, the water was running very flowing really well, and then the creek would continue down the hill. And I used to walk down there a lot, and there's a lot of pools where animals can come. Gotcha. So it wasn't really much of a dam, but there used to be a pool there where people could kind of get in there and swim a little bit. Gotcha.
Now the water is so erratic that it's probably a little difficult. Good. Yeah. We have another question. Can you tell us a bit more about the orchid and the water?
Not sure what that means.
Me neither. Can't help you. Mark, maybe you want to expand a little bit on your question. Another question has come through. What was the best thing about caretaking?
I think the idea, what was really interesting to me, during the first 3-year retreat, I was never very close to any of the people who did it, apart from Geshe Michael. And while I was taking care of them, I became very sensitive to them. And I almost felt like a mother. I would go to the store and I think, oh, this person likes licorice and this person likes M&Ms, and I can get the treats for them. And it's interesting to going from without even seeing them, because I didn't see them for 3 years, but just by taking care of people, you start to love them. And for me, that was very interesting, because I wouldn't have known that otherwise. But I think parents find that out, because they're given this random child. You have a child, you don't know the child, and then you start caring for them, and then you love them more than anything. And I felt that way too. It was really interesting.
Fascinating. All right, we have one more question. Could you please let us know how it would be one day schedule from beginning of the tea until you go to sleep? So maybe an example of a day.
Yeah. Normally, so I would get up, and most people get up around 3 o'clock, and you brush your teeth, do what you need to do. Sometimes it's nice to make some tea or something hot to drink because it's early. And then you do your first session rather quickly after you've gotten up. And then, so that takes about an hour, maybe an hour or two, maybe 2 hours. And after that, what I would usually do is go back to bed because it's still really early. And the nice thing about that is, so you've been meditating and your mind is very clear and you have the most beautiful dreams. It's really, really sweet. And then you get up again around, well, whenever 7 maybe. And then that's like when you really get up. And when you're doing a strict retreat, normally you do 2 sessions before, 1 session before the sun comes up, 1 session after and before noon, and then 1 afternoon and before the sun goes down, and then 1 session after the sun goes down. So that's how it's how you structure your sessions. And then you figure out when you're going to eat, depending on how that works out. When I was in, when I did the long retreat, Geshe-la said I should do Ashtanga Yoga every day, hour and a half. So I did that. And that's, I was a lot younger then, not a whole lot, but I could do it.
You're a lot younger.
I don't know if I still could. But so yeah, and that's good. He said I should walk every day for at least a half an hour. So I used to go all over the mountains, all around Diamond Mountain. I used to go for hikes. And he wanted me to memorize every day. So I spent, I think it was only 15 minutes, which was good because I don't like memorizing. But it's really nice if you memorize, because then you have the scripture in your mind. And I remember things that when I was a child, I was in a Catholic church and we used to sing Gregorian chant, and a lot of those things I still remember, and it comes back, you know. And then so I know it's very valuable. So if you're, you know, that's one thing to do in retreat. What else? I can't remember. Oh, studying. That's always good. You know, I actually had a tambura and I took it into retreat and I did some chanting there. It opens your heart. So there's different things you can do in retreat, and it's good to ask your teacher for a schedule actually, because it can be tailored to you. One other thing also, again, don't push yourself. One time I was in a retreat when Ken Rinpoche was still alive, and I was a little bit sick, and the first session was too much for me. So I actually had my computer with me, so I didn't know how to communicate with him. So I sent a text to one of my friends who was there with him, and she asked him, and he said, "Yeah, just skip the first session, and don't text me anymore during retreat." Because you're not supposed to be on your computer during retreat.
No, thank you. That was very, very interesting and very helpful. I know that Venerable Sunam also worked out a 3-day schedule for beginners. So if anyone is a beginner that listens to this recording, let us know and we can share that with you as well. We only have a few minutes left. So I want to say thank you very, very much for sharing all your stories and wisdom, and it's been absolutely fascinating. And I feel strongly we have to have a follow-up session because there's so much more to unearth there. But I do also want to give Venerable Sunam a moment to speak a little bit about this new exciting stupa project that we have now embarked on, so that everyone can just have a bit of background there as well. So thank you very, very much for sharing. We really appreciate it.
I can only agree. I could listen hours and hours and days to all the history, to all the stories, you know. And I also want to send out a thank you to David and Sarani and Earl I saw in the audience. Maybe you guys would be a good one for Diamond Mountain History Part 2.
I didn't know they were there.
Thank you so much. And we are nearly at the end, so I will make it short. We reached the 4 million on December 13th. So happy. We are really, so we want to say thank you, this incredible generosity. On the stupa update side, you see the actual numbers. I put it in the chat. And also we created a stupa timeline, so you can really see what is happening more or less in the project. And I had the honor to be last week in Portugal. I was visiting the workshop who is cutting the marble for the stupa. It's so amazing that we decided on a short notice that this will be the topic for next month. How the marble is prepared for the stupa. Thank you so much, Jigme. It's so incredible. You need to come more often, please, and share your
You're welcome.
Knowledge, your history, your love, your compassion for this incredible place.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to all the translators. You are all amazing. We really appreciate all the time and effort that you spend as well on these calls, and we hope that you take something away for yourself as well. We'll let you know when the next talk is going to happen, so keep your eyes on the website, and we'll also send out some notifications. All right, have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.